for big business.
RSK, let it play,
Yeah.
boy.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. I wake up and say me a prayer. Brush my teeth, babe, then I throw on some threads. Wash my face, grab a cup, pour me some yum. Put on my backpack, then I'm off to the bread. I eat these devils for breakfast, gotta be careful. Whole lot of blood being shed in the streets. World is so wicked, I weep for the living. I drop a free cheer for the dead. All my white friends in my pocket, or either they loading onto this black card that I swipe. Say every time that I drop it, the verse be hitting more harder than problems of life. Rich, I collected 2 pennies from every person that willingly gave me advice. Being afraid can't exist in my spirit. I'm fearing no man but the Father in Christ. I put in work with the brothers. We stood on them corners from 10 to like 9 to some night, teaching our people the gospel, equipped with a camera, some posters, some speakers, and mic. Every time that I see mama, she telling me, son, you gotta walk in the light. Christ, the bread of heaven, keep feeding my spirit, and I wanna low, not a slide. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
When I tell you I'm an Israelite, tribe of Judah, don't you take it personal. Bleed the blood on these demons, we purging them. Don't entertain Jezebels, we be curving them. Ayy, I got a ribbon, she virtuous. In person, this blue life ain't virtual. I can't forget when I heard the truth. I got cut with that word, it got surgical. Conviction can lead to repentance. I pray these verses encourage you. We repented, now we on the vertical. Judah rising, see Isaiah 32. Big business, nothing minuscule. I picked up that pen back in middle school. Guard your light and take heed who you listen to. Watch your mouth and your ears and your vision too. Hashatan and Shalkani won't finish you. In Mortal Kombat, this war is not physical. Gird your loins up and follow the general. Messiah is coming, that's scriptural. You gotta starve your flesh. The real war ain't even started yet. This look like a setup for a second exodus. I'm trying to be where the water at. Let's get it.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
Yo, we're back. You know, we had technical difficulties last time we were on, but we're here to finish the job. And we got the savant all the way from the Levant. Y'all should know by now. If you don't know by now, do your background check. My brother about to wreck. This is Ivri of Israel, aka Hebrew of Israel. And this brother has set the channel on fire. You brothers been loving every presentation this brother has brought to the table. The young phenom, the genius, the guy on is back. The savant from the Levant. With no further ado, the floor is yours, my brother.
All right, shalom, everybody. It's going to be a little shorter tonight than it was the other nights that I normally do this, but that's all right because that means we'll have more time for a Q&A. And after this presentation, I'm going to make a special presentation dealing with haplogroup J. And that one's going to take a little bit of time. Y'all might have to wait about a week, maybe even 2, but it's going to have a lot of good information. And if y'all don't mind waiting for a few minutes, I gotta go handle something.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't watched part 1, part 2, and part 3 and part 4, I advise you guys once this stream is over with to go check those out. I will be putting these videos in a playlist format on the channel, so all you have to do is click the playlist. You can watch from the beginning in sequential order and actually get all of the sources and information that this brother has to provide. He mentions a lot of great arguments and a lot of empirical evidence to prove, like EM34, for example, was already in the Levant, and these people with the J markers and the FM89 lineages, which are your early European, Proto-European peoples, would have came in, or descendants of the Proto-European peoples, rather, would have came into the Levant and absorbed and adopted the Semitic culture from the E markers, the people that had E markers.
All right, so let's get started. Like I said, this is just the last part of the presentation. And let's begin. So, Peleg, son of Eber. Eber, the father of the Hebrew people, had a son named Peleg. This is actually who Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would descend from. If you look at the genealogy, you have Eber right here, and then Peleg, and then from Peleg to Ru, to Serg, to Nahor, to Terah, to Abraham. And we talked about Joktan the other night. Basically, Joktan would represent the Arabians and Horn Africans. This is why you see a lot of various subclades of haplogroup E, even in Arabia, but also in the Horn of Africa. These would be your Joktanites, a lot of Horn Africans. This is why you see a huge percentage of E in the Horn of Africa. It's because of these Joktanites. And I can do a full presentation after I'm done with haplogroup J and after I'm done with Israel and the Canaanites. I could do a presentation on Joktan because he is a very important key to understanding haplogroup E, the sub branches, and the people in Eastern Africa, as well as in Arabia. But anyways, so as stated before, I believe Peleg and the first generation of his progeny were Natufians, or at least they descend from the early descendants of the Natufians. Peleg's lineage of Proto-Semites would have migrated to the north of the Levant, while Joktan descendants migrated to Yemen and Eastern Africa. As you can see, when the Semitic languages dispersed, they went from the Levant to Mesopotamia, but also from the Levant to southern Arabia and the Horn of Africa. And you can see this even with haplogroup E. Haplogroup E expanded from the Levant into Mesopotamia and into Arabia and the Horn of Africa. So here's another visualization of haplogroup E going into Mesopotamia, because we're dealing with Peleg. This will be Peleg's descendants, the people of Terah and Abraham, all of his cousins. And here's another representation of that. Every dot you see is a haplogroup E marker we find. And of course, over here is the major markers that a lot of people descend from in bold. Now, Abraham would descend specifically from a lineage of Natufians / Proto-Semites that migrated north and created the city of Ur in northern Turkey, northern Syria / southern Turkey. According to some Jewish and Muslim sources, Ur of Ur-Kasdim, the homeland of Abraham and grandfather of Jacob, whom God named Israel. Ur is one of the truly ancient cities of the world. The city began circa 9000 BCE as a PPNA Neolithic site located near Abraham's pools. It was part of a network of first settlements spanning West Asia where agriculture began. And we know that agriculture began with the Natufians. These Natufians built the city of Ur, specifically from the PPNA Neolithic period. Now, going over here, we know that early PPNA people and PPNB culture developed from the Mesolithic Natufians. There's more evidence that Ur was built by Natufians, who will be the ancestors of Abraham. I believe that Abraham descends from a specific clan or family of Natufians that was a tight knit and genetically, would have mixed with themselves. Here's a good map of the Natufian range going from the Sinai Peninsula all the way up to Upper Mesopotamia. Here's a PPNB site, again, from the lower Levant to the northern Levant. Here's a better image, just in case you can't see that. This is the Natufian range. This is what the range that Abraham's descendants and the descendants of Proto-Semites in general would have traveled from. So another important reason why this is the best for where Abraham came from is because two of these villages that become a nucleus for the major cities of and Haran, these two cities sort of began and were important and famous back in the day. And they're very close to each other. And of course, we know, according to Genesis chapter 31 through 32, that Abraham left from and they went to Haran, the city of Haran, and Terah even died in that city. So it's makes more sense that he would have went just a few miles to Haran, a major city, a city just as major as and then he would continue his journey on down to the land of Canaan. So because Abraham would likely descend from PPNA and PPNB Natufians, there is reason to believe he would have had haplogroup E, considering that the culture is linked with the Natufians, the and Natufian sites. For instance, the Urfa man resembles both carvings at nearby Gillespie Tupbi and statues found at Enet Gazelle. So in Enet Gazelle, that's near the Jordan, the modern day country of the Jordan. And what we found in the site is that Y-DNA haplogroup E1, B1, B1, B12 has been found at 75% of the An Gazelle population, among with 60% of PPNB populations and in most Natufians. So there goes your haplogroup E connection between Natufians, and that whole region. So now looking at the route that Abraham would have traveled from to Haran to Canaan, this is again the same type of route that the Natufians often traveled. So it's very significant. It's very interesting. So also the reason why it's likely that Abraham descended from Natufians is because they are the ancestors of Semites. Again, this book is from In the Hot Pursuit of Language and Prehistory. This paper makes an additional inference since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that Natufians were related to modern Semitic speaking peoples of the Levant, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is from Paleolithic DNA from the Caucasus reveals core of West Eurasian ancestry. Such a scenario will also explain the presence of Y chromosome E in the Natufians and Levantine farmers, a common link between the Levant and Africa. So the Y DNA haplogroup of Abraham, which would include Isaac and Jacob, is likely haplogroup E. The maternal haplogroup of the matriarchs, in my opinion, could be mtDNA haplogroup L. Again, we find haplogroup L2A in ancient Syria, specifically in the pre-pottery Neolithic time period. And we found that even women in Tanzania during that time frame had Levantine ancestry. Admixture clustering analysis further indicate that the individual bore significant ancestry from ancient Levant, confirming ancestral ties between the markers of the Savannah pastoral Neolithic and the pre-pottery Neolithic. With that being said, what could the early patriarchs and matriarchs look like? We dealt with genetics. Now, what is their phenotype? According to various Hebrew, Muslim, Persian, and Christian sources, etc., Shem and his descendants were both described as being very dark-skinned. For instance, from Pekri D. Rabbi Eliezer, he says, he blessed Shem and his sons black but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth. Again, from a Muslim writer, Tabari, he says, the children of Sam or Shem settled in the center of the earth, which is between Sadatama and the sea, and between Yemen and Syria. Allah made the prophets from them, revealed the books to them, made them beautiful, gave them a black complexion, luminous and free of blemish. This is from the Persian historian Tabari. Born to Noah were Shem, whose descendants' colors are a black complexion with a lightish brown undertone and a dark blackish brown. This is from Ibn Abbas, a famous Arabic scholar who said, Allah made the descendants of Sam or Shem and the descendants of Ham black-skinned. And this is from the Christian writer Habakkuk, Shem, the land of the Browns. So specifically, where Abraham was from, which was, of course, northern Syria and southern Turkey, there was Semitic populations there described by the Greeks as being very dark-skinned. Remember, Abraham is from this region of Upper Mesopotamia, also known as Amram, Nehorim. And so, according to the Greeks, the white Syrians whom Strabo places in the region must be the Hittites. Indeed, and now skipping on down to the red line, indeed, there are especially contrasted with the black Syrians who are said to live east of Amenas and must subsequently be Aramaeans. And so east of Armanus Mountains, these are the Armanus Mountains, and these are the various cities to the east of the Armanus Mountains. We're going to have our focus on Tel Barsip. But going back to more writing from the Greeks, the Chuba Arabs, the present possessors of the more southern parts of Babylonia, are nearly black, and the black Syrians, of whom Strabo speaks, seem intended to represent the Babylonians. And again, another book, the Lycio City, the ancient name of Syrians inhabiting Cappadocia, but which they were distinguished from the more South Syrians, who were of a darker complexion. So, of course, I'm not saying that all Syrians or all people in the land of Syria were white. There's definitely a distinction between Syrians of a more southern, darker complexion versus Syrians of a more lighter complexion. And I believe Abraham comes from the darker complected Syrians. So, evidence for this, remember, Tel Barsip, there is a fresco in the region that shows clearly a darker skinned Syrian type and a lighter skinned Syrian type, like what the Greeks were saying. There was darker Syrians who they called Arameans, and then there was, of course, a lighter type of Syrians who may be the Assyrians. And you can find this fresco at it's the Tel Barkaris assault of the Assyrian king. And so here it is again, if you want to know the location. And again, it's not far from where Abraham lived in Ur. It's just a little bit to the south. So you can find this fresco at a museum, the Louvre Museum. I believe it's French. I believe it's in France. And this is the fresco you will find. Someone took a picture at the museum. This war between darker skinned and lighter skinned Syrian people. The Egyptians also depicted very dark skinned Syrian Bedouins as well. You can find this at globalegyptianmuseum.org. Over here it says head of a Bedouin from Syria. And this was from I believe the 20th dynasty period. And it says head with a brown red skin. And it goes on to describe the rest of the features. But yeah, this is a Bedouin Syrian. And this is another one, globalegyptianmuseum.org. Again, head of a Bedouin from Syria. The description, head with red brown skin, and this is this guy. And so Abraham could have looked like the darker skinned inhabitants of Syria at that time. And here's, all the images together. It appears that there was a population in ancient Syria with, if you want to say dreadlocks or just locks of hair with a band around the head, as you can see, and a beard. I believe Abraham could have looked something like this, perhaps. So, but to go even further, he could have also looked like his cousins, his ethnic cousins, the Arabians or the Jokhtanites. Remember, Jokhtanites are the ancient cousins to Abraham. Therefore, there's a high probability that Abraham could have looked Yemeni or Ethiopic. Remember, Peleg and Joktan are brothers. Their ancestor is Eber. Abraham is a distant relative to Joktanites, and I already have a presentation on who the Joktanites are. They are Yemeni and Horn Africans. So Abraham could have looked like, for instance, let's say the Sabaeans, and Sabaeans themselves look extremely similar to East Africans because really East Africans descend from Sabaeans and Southern Arabians. So this is another example as to how Abraham could have looked. Therefore, when we look at the murals of Syria and Mari, again, let's go back to Syria, they also depict very dark-skinned Syrians as well. For instance, if you remember from I believe this was from my second presentation, I showed you the inhabitants of Mari. Again, Mari was a Semitic civilization in Syria, and they again depicted very dark-skinned looking individuals. Furthermore, we know that Abraham was a descendant of the Natufians. Semites, Natufians are the ancestors of Semites. So again, Abraham could have also looked like a Natufian. And Natufians, the description is in the late Paleocene, Natufian sample from Israel is the source from which that Neolithic spread was derived. Then there was clearly a sub-Saharan African element present of almost equal importance to the late prehistoric Eurasian element. So Abraham could have also looked like a Natufian. He just would have, had a beard. And here's, of course, what I believe a very good representation of a modern Natufian is common. I mean, just looking at the features, he looks sort of like him. But anyways, combining all this information together, I would say that the early patriarchs and the matriarchs could have been, very dark-skinned with a brown complexion. Their hair could have been curly to thick, and overall, their features would have been something in between a Natufian and a Yemeni person. So here's all the information together. Abraham sort of would have looked like these types of people is what I'm sort of getting at when it comes to the whole phenotype thing. I'll let y'all take a look at that for a second. Basically, brown skin, black hair, kind of, wavy, I guess. But anyways, combining all this information together, I would say that the early patriarchs and matriarchs could have carried Y DNA haplogroup E, and personally for me, mtDNA haplogroup L. Again, when you put all the information together, the ancestors of Semites are the Natufians. Natufians carried haplogroup E, and Proto-Semites expanded haplogroup E during the late Copper Age to the early Bronze Age. All the papers connect when you put them together. And this would have been Abraham, his ancestors, and his descendants. And again, with haplogroup L2A. I only say that the matriarchs could have had haplogroup L2A because of Azurad, the Hamitic Cushitic African wife of Eber. And Eber is the father of the Hebrew people. Azurad would be the mother of the Hebrew women. So a final important factor that I like to add is that if the Book of Jubilees is correct, then Eber marrying and having Peleg and Joktan with Azurad, his Hamitic wife, Does this prove that the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, including the Israelites, has African DNA? And it would. If you take the Book of Jubilees to be true, which I do, I believe that the Israelites before Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob definitely had African or Hamitic blood, and that this is the start, Eber and Azurad, this is the start of a common link between Shem and Ham. Eber, father of the Hebrew people, gets with a Cushite, Azurad, from the daughter of Nimrod, granddaughter of Cush, granddaughter of Ham. This African DNA, this African influence into Shem begins with Eber, and thus all the descendants from Peleg to Abraham to Israel already would have had African admixture. And there's definitely a link between Shem and Ham very early before the birth of Abraham. As Jubilees 8, chapter 8, verse 9 through 11 says, Eber, and he took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azurat, the daughter of Nimrod. She bare to him a son, and called his name Peleg. Remember, Peleg is the ancestor of Abraham. And remember, Azurat is a Hamitic Cushite. So, and again, this ties together with what we know about early haplogroup E and mitochondrial L people and mixing with one another. This book says, one language family is clearly linked to the spread of farming from the Near East, the Afroasiatic family, including ancient Egyptian and other languages that appear in early written records, such as Akkadian, which is Semitic, in Mesopotamia. There is a genetic hint of arrivals from Africa, which could be Azurat. The African mtDNA haplogroup L2A has been found at the farming settlement of Tel Halel in Syria at a pre-pottery level. Y DNA E1B1B1 across both the north and south coast of the Mediterranean is a clue that it was the male partner of L2A1. Then the subclade of E1B1B helped to spread farming across the Mediterranean, where most of the Bible takes place. And again, another paper goes into the fact of Africans and Semites mixing. It says Saharan people, which is where I believe Azurat would be, Saharan people would have met and mixed with the descendants of Southwest Asian Neolithic populations, who I believe Eber is, which is a Natufian, responsible for the introduction of Southwest Asian agriculture tradition into the Nile Valley about 1,500 years ago. The resulting amalgam was later to develop into one of the most remarkable civilizations in the ancient world, a true synthesis of the Oriental, the Semitic, and the African, the Hamitic. Again, in ancient times, in archaeology and in biology, we're able to see that there was mixing between Asiatics and Africans. This is Eber and Azurad, in my opinion. And again, just as Christopher Ehret says, after all, the early Semites were just a few Africans arriving to find a lot of people already in the area. This is why Semites are so African, because they're mixing with Africans, and you're pretty much already a half African. So this is why you find this in archaeology. So, conclusion. Now we made it to the end of the video. This is the Q&A section. My next presentation will cover haplogroup J in very deep detail. It's gonna be a lot better than even these videos that I've made, I believe, in my opinion. So let's begin with the Q&A.
All right, anybody in the audience, if you have any questions, it's time to pose the questions. This is actually a continuation of part 4 because we were unable to, complete that one. So if you guys have any questions, it's time to pose them. Ivri, do you want to give the people a quick buffer and a refresher on what was actually covered 2 nights ago? In part 4.
Yes, I can do that. I can even flip to the slides. and just not read everything, but kind of like skim over it. But while I pull it up, so basically last time I was here, we for the most part focused on Joktan, and I believe Joktan is a very important key in understanding the ancient relatives of the Israelites, as well as why a lot of haplogroup E markers are in the Horn of Africa. Can you show the screen? I think I have it ready. Yeah. So just to scroll through, we talked, as I said, about Joktan. We know that according to the scriptures, Peleg married a Hamite, and from this admixture, you get Peleg and Joktan. And so I believe this is interesting because when it comes to Joktan's descendants, they settled from the Jordan in Mesha all the way to Sephar in Yemen. And if you visualize this, this is basically the western portion of Arabia. And they would have traveled from Mesha to Sephar because as the scripture says, they were dwelling from Mesha towards Sephar. So it sounds like that they would have migrated from the Levant to the Yemen region, which of course supports the idea that Semites expanded from the Levant. And I believe Joktan's descendants formed either his descendants, his early descendants would have formed some of the first cities of the Levant, the ones that stayed in that region, such as Jericho, because it has a son named Jerah, or they have a lot of similar West Semitic names like Almadad. He has El in his name, and there's just a few examples such as that. And of course, there's tons of evidence that Joktanites would have been in the southern Arabia, such as Hazarmeth, which is very similar to the Hadramet region. Just to go over like one quick example. And so, as I said before, Semitic languages did disperse from the Levant going to South Arabia and into the Horn of Africa. And so I believe this is your Joktanites. Again, when it comes to the haplogroup E, the same thing would have occurred. You have E expanding from the Levant into the Horn of Africa. And so what we find is that you find a good percentage of E in the Jordan, which is where Joktan would have been. And you find a good percentage of haplogroup E in Arabia and also in the region of Yemen, up to 50%, all the way to 25%, depending on the towns and the regions and the clans. And a lot of these Joktanites have this high percentage of E. And here's just a visualization. You see a darker pigment of E on the Western Arabian coast and the Southern Arabian coast, also in parts of Eastern Africa. Again, I believe this is your Joktanites. And so we went down using language, going all the way from Proto-Afroasiatic all the way down to Amharic. And you see, again, that's just more evidence that you had these people coming from the Middle East into the Horn of Africa, just visualizing this for you. And so there was many, Semitic civilizations in southern Arabia or Yemen. You have the Sabaeans, and you have Dement, which is actually in northern Ethiopia. And you also have Aksum. I think we're all familiar with that one. And so a lot of these Horn Africans claim that they come from the Arabian Peninsula and that they are descendants of Semites. You have people like the Habasha, and you have people like the Tigray people, and you have people like the Amhara. And what's interesting about all these groups that claim Semitic ancestry, these Ethio-Semitic groups, is that they have high amounts of haplogroup E. They have haplogroup E at the highest amount than any other haplogroup. If you were to look at all their genetic makeup, they have haplogroup E over 50% based on other haplogroups. So they definitely would have came from the Middle East. And even their specific subclade, scientists do say, yes, it does come from the Near East. It says E-M34 chromosomes were likely introduced in Ethiopia from the Middle East. and I went over that last week. And so basically, I'm making this connection that these Horners that a lot of people like the term Cushites. They're really Semites that mix with Cushites, which I've said in the past is haplogroup A individuals. But really, they're just Semites, they're Jokhtonites. And I can go much deeper into this into the future. And also into the phenotype. It's actually believed that Jokhtonites looked Hamitic, that they had a Hamitic look to them. And they're described as looking like the Darfur people. And the Darfur people in the Arabian Peninsula sort of look like Ethiopians, in my opinion. And so I went over like different phenotypes of Joktan, and a lot of Arabians. If you go back to the 19th century, a lot of these Arabian peoples, they have very dark complexions than they do today. I mean, you can still find them today, but in the past, you definitely saw that a lot. And they even had like locks of hair, which is very interesting. Their hair was quite, and even afro in texture too. But Joktonites are also said to be the pure Arabs, or the original Arabs, the true Arabs. And I find that to be very fascinating, just, based on their genetics being haplogroup E and them being very dark skinned. I'm like, oh, okay, so people think that these are the original Arabs. And of course, if you go into biology, it is believed that the original Arab caste was a more Ethiopic phenotype. And we went into this when we looked at the Sabaean statues and Ethiopian people, and they often do resemble, each other, because really Horn Africans descend from Arabians from the Middle East. And so basically summing everything up together, we discussed about how Joktonites settled from Misha to Safar, from the Levant to Arabia. This fits the linguistic model that Semitic languages expanded from the Levant into the Southern Arabia and even to the Horn of Africa. And this also fits with haplogroup E coming from the Middle East into the Horn of Africa. And these early peoples of the Arabian Peninsula are described as being Joktonites according to Arab tradition. And these Joktonites have a very Ethiopic looking phenotype, but that's because Horn Africans really are Semites. They're Afro-Asiatic, they're Semites, and they are our cousins. They are the Joktonites of scripture. Joktan is a very important key, and I can go deeper into him in the future. I can deal with his specific sons, the civilizations in Eastern Africa and Arabia. I can also go deeper into the Cushites. What is that? Because I know a lot of us assume that Horn Africans are Cushites, but it's more deeper than just the word Cushite. It's a lot deeper, especially when you get into the genetics. We have to be careful about just using these Western terms, because if you look at the DNA, really there's something else. They're Joktan, but we can do that another time.
All right, we got a few questions coming in. One guy's actually scoffing, but we will still answer his questions. So,
oh yeah, bring them all in, scoffers and truthers.
But summation on that was beautiful, especially with the connection to Abraham and how he possibly could look. Very powerful information.
Thank you.
Dasharab. Just so no such thing as Semites until Africans got to Arabia, Levantine area. That's his question. Did you hear that, Ivory?
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. No such thing as Semites until Africans got to Arabia / the Levantine area. No such thing as Semites. Do you mean the Semitic language, or like a Semitic genome, or haplogroup E? I kind of won't.
Yeah, I think he's conflating the idea of language and ethnicity together. I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah, because depending on even what model you choose on the origins of Afro-Asiatic, Proto-Semites could have came from the Horn of Africa. They could have came from Yemen. They could have came from North Africa. A lot of people like that theory, like Amir and Ghozi, which means Semites would have existed in Africa, before entering the Levant. But to answer your question, I guess it sort of depends on which model you use for the origin of Afro-Asiatic. and for the origin of Semites. Like I said, my model, my personal belief is that Semites originate from the Tufians from the Levant. But if you want, Semites could originate from North Africa. So, it just depends on your worldview, your model, to answer that question. Kind of hoping I answered it. How do you combat the idea that Sumerians were white? Ooh, I can explain that question when we discuss haplogroup J. I'll answer that question then, because y'all not going to like my answer on who the Sumerians are. But by the end of it, I think you will be satisfied. But just know this: Sumerians did not speak a Semitic language. Sumerians spoke a non-Semitic language and a non-Indo-European languages. So if you kind of want to know what the Sumerians are, just start looking at some languages that aren't Semitic and that aren't Indo-European. But those guys were not Semites. And I don't agree that people think that Abraham was a Sumerian, because he wasn't. But anyways, Semitic is a young branch of Afro-Asiatic. Ain't Semitic supposed to be the oldest? So Semitic technically is, in the academic sense, the last branch of Afro-Asiatic. But according to my view personally, I kind of believe that Semitic was the original form of Proto-Afro-Asiatic, and everything else came from Semitic, because Semites were dealing with Africans. That's my view. But for the academic consensus, yes, Semitic is a younger branch. But in my worldview, I believe Semitic was older. Then I can actually parse that out another time. Africans descend from Arabs. Y'all out too much. Africans descend from Arabs. Well, it kind of depends on that term, African. Like if I were to say a pygmy descends from Arabs, I would say no. So first, to sort of break that question down, what type of Africans are you talking about? Khoisanes, Nilots, pygmies, Berbers? Like what type of African? And also when it comes to Arabs, what type of Arabs are you talking about? Because there are technically different types of Arabs. You have, in a genetic sense, you have Arabs with haplogroup J, like the Saudi family. You have Arabs with haplogroup E, like the people in Yemen. So, can you break that down? Like, what do you mean by Africans descend from Arabs? I would say no.
I think he heard you say something about the early Arab people would have been E markers or something to the effect of that, have been dark skinned, or the original Arabs being dark skinned. So I think he took
Okay.
offense to that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I would say Horners descend from ancient Proto-Arabians, not just Arabs, like not Ishmael, but Jokhtanites, who Joktan was born long before Abraham. So he was born a few generations before Ishmael. I believe Horners specifically descend from Joktan, who's supposed to be the original true Arabian. So I will say that to that question. Hopefully, you follow me.
He's levying accusations here. He said just assigning identities and labels willy nilly, as if you weren't reading from source material in academia.
Yeah, I had sources for everything I said about. Do I need to pull them back up? For what part, by the way? Can you be a little bit more specific, and then maybe I can
he may be playing off the Arab comment that he just made. So I would give him a source on that.
Sure. Let me pull up this presentation. So, Dasharab, tell me which one are you talking about? Do you think he's talking about the Arab one you said, or is he talking about something else? I probably need to keep this presentation up a little bit longer. If he's talking about the Arab one, All right. So just in case you don't trust my words or whatever, I'll let Yeshua read only what's in red, because apparently I'm not telling the truth.
All right, so it says regarding the origin of the Arab race, a third is named Himyar or Dusky, a circumstance pointing like the former to the African origin. A fourth is the Himyaric language. The preserved words are African in character, often in identity. Indeed, the dialect commonly used along the southeastern coast hardly differs from that used by Somali Africans on the opposite shore. The pure Arabs differ from that of the north. It approaches to or coincides with the Abyssinian. Sixthly, the pre-Islamic institutions of Yemen and its allied province, its monarchies, courts, armies, and serfs bear a marked resemblance to the historical Africano Egyptian type, even to modern Abyssinian. Seventhly, the physical conformation of the pure-blooded Arab inhabitants of Yemen, Hadramaut, Aman. Other particulars point in an African rather than an Asiatic direction. All right, so to read the bottom, I have to take the comment off. Hold on. It says, lastly, the extreme facility of marriage which exists in all classes of the southern Arabs with the African races. The fecundity of such unions and the slightness or even absence of any caste feeling between the dusky pure Arab and the still darker native of modern Africa may be regarded as pointing in the direction of a community of origin.
A community of origin. So he's saying that really the Horn Africans and Arabians of South Arabia could have a common origin. I believe that common origin is Joktan, if you put all the other sources I said together. But yeah, I guess I'll just leave this up just in case I have to scroll through it for people who may not have seen it.
Keep it up for the scoffers.
Yeah.
So we had another question, or was it someone else? All right, here.
Abraham would have looked exactly like Yemeni Yahudi. Yes,
I think we know who this is.
Yeah, I know that is. Yitzhak. But yes, that was in my presentation as well when it came to the various phenotypes that Abraham could have had. I definitely had the Sabaean as one of the examples, the Sabaean statues, which look like Yemeni and Ethiopic people. Yep. So, who is Iwam in your opinion? There is a lot. There is so little info on this haplogroup. It's frustrating. Yeah, I believe E1A would. I had this question before actually, but I believe E1A will represent the quote unquote other sons of Arphaxad, because in scripture there's mention that he had other sons besides Sheila. And I would say these other sons just could be E1A people, in my opinion. Now, if you were to ask, what's his name, Mgozi, he believes that E1A could be Hamites, because he sort of goes with the belief that Shem and Ham were both E, and E1A are Hamites, but E-P2, which is E1B1A and E1B1B, they're Shem. So that's his view, and I think that's an interesting view as well. But for my view, I would say that E1A are the other sons of Arphaxad, which is mentioned in Genesis. He didn't just have Sheila. People kind of over read that particular verse.
Dasharab. That's more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, I don't think I'm always talking about foreigners. I think I'm always talking about foreigners. But yeah, I don't think I'm always talking about foreigners. I think I'm always talking about foreigners. Yeah, I don't think I'm always talking about foreigners. I think I'm always talking about foreigners. Yeah, I don't think I'm always talking about foreigners. I think I'm always talking about foreigners. Yeah, I don't think I'm always talking about foreigners. I think to the last time I was here, I'll admit I did, but for the most part, I feel like I talked more about the Natufians than the Horners, if I'm talking about any group. Okay, so do the genetics do the genetics support the Arabian Judea theory? Can you go into a little bit more detail? Do you mean that Judah comes from Arabians? And by Judah, are you talking about the specific tribe of Judah, or are you talking about the entire nation, the 12 tribes? Can you give just a little bit more detail on that? But I believe that ancient Israel descends from Natufians, and Natufians have like a very ancient form of Arabian DNA. So a little bit, yes, but you know, a little bit more context to it. A lot of that Arabian DNA probably been pushed out of them from the Exodus. But anyways, what's the quickest source? What's the quickest source outside of the Bible you can point to shows you Jesus was black? The best source that I would say that Jesus was dark skinned. I try to be careful about using the word black because when people think of black, they think of sub-Saharan African Negroids, and I'm like, well, you know, when I say black, I mean dark skinned. But anyways. The quickest source I'll go to for Jesus being dark skinned is Josephus. He literally said that he had dark skin, and he had, you know, what's it like, wavy, curly, thick hair, and a long nose. Probably like a Yemeni or a Fulani, in my opinion.
You're gonna like this next one, brother. You're
Oh,
gonna like
yeah. All right.
this. You ready? You brace yourself.
Yep. Are y'all Content Pro? Y'all trying to get it? I have no problem already. I don't really think I'm dividing up Africans. If anything, I think I'm showing a common unity between us all. I actually, if you join some of our clubhouse discussions, we often talk about unity between East Africans, North Africans, and Sub-Saharan Africans because we're all linked by haplogroup E. We're all technically cousins. I'm not trying to divide Africans up. I'm really trying to show a commonality between us all, even though we look different. We're all genetically similar. If you feel like that I'm trying to divide up Africans, I'm sorry that came across that way, but I do want to see a unity between all African, all Semitic, all Afro-Asiatic people.
Yeah, Dasharab's a little salty because he's haplogroup A in our content.
Oh.
Yeah. Our content's pretty much tailored for haplogroup E. We're trying to, uncover E. So I guess he feels slighted because we're not doing any content, including his.
That's Rob. I did a presentation, a part 3 or part 4, where I did talk about haplogroup A. I mentioned how haplogroup A is seen in Nilotic people, Nilo-Saharans, and Nubians, one of the greatest African civilizations. So I'm not downplaying A. I believe A has has great civilizations like Nubia, as I said, the ancient kingdom of Kush. So find my presentation on Genesis 49er. I think it was part 3 or 4, and I go into haplogroup A. Just because I talk about E doesn't mean I don't care about A. A definitely was influential in African civilization.
Yep.
Nimrod would have had haplogroup A. He built Mesopotamia.
I guess just like Chemo said, since you're telling the truth, you're COINTELPRO.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Trust me, if I was COINTELPRO, I would not be doing those YouTube videos.
I mean, did you get your check from the government yet? Since you're COINTELPRO, like,
Need to talk to Joe Biden about that stimulus. Oh wait, what is this? The original land of Sheba was Yemen under the king Menelik, son of Solomon. He invaded Ethiopia and started the kingdom of Abyssinia, and the Amharic people that are Israelites, Jokthanites, and Midianites. Agreed, Yitzhak. I actually went into that last week and did a brief summary over that. But yeah, definitely. See if I can find it. Definitely the Amharic. No, that's Hakkashin. Definitely the Amhara people are of Semitic origin. I went into that. You can watch my last video, which is part 4, and I do sort of go into that. I didn't want to go too deep into Sheba because honestly, an entire presentation would have to be dedicated to that story of the story of King Solomon, Queen Sheba, like all that can be its own video, especially when he sells to Havilah and Ophir. Definitely deserves its entire own presentation. But yeah, I did briefly go into that. So that's in part 4. But you're right. Amharic people are Shemitic. They have Israelites among them. They have Jokthanites among them. And I'm still doing some research to see if they have Midianites among them. Again, my theory is that Midianites are Berbers, but I can go into that another time. Yes, the Kalama Salabi theory. What is that? I'm gonna have to like hear a synopsis on that. The Kalama Salabi theory. I'm not for sure.
I guess he's referring back to the question he said earlier about the Arabian Judah theory. I guess that's the name of it. I never heard of it, so I can't speak on it.
Yeah, me neither, unfortunately.
All right, you ready for another one? Are you bracing yourself again?
Let me get a sip of water. All right, I'm ready. Shem is older than Ham, but Semite language is a baby. That makes no sense. Actually, I think Japheth is the oldest son of Ham. Son of Noah. I think I remember reading scripture that Japheth is actually the oldest. Can you look that up for me, Yeshua, if you want?
Yeah, I got you.
I think Japheth is the oldest.
I think it's more of a how you read the verse. But let me look it up. Japheth, oldest son. I hear people say that Shem the oldest. Some people say Japheth's the oldest. Yeah, but right here, this source is saying that Japheth must have been the oldest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like I said, it's different opinions on it. It just depends on how you. Yeah, this one answers in Genesis says Genesis 10:21 indicates that Japheth was the oldest and was born when Noah was 500 years old. Ham is the youngest. So they got Shem as the middle child.
Right. Yeah, so to answer your question, Dr. Rob, really Japheth is the oldest. Shem is the middle child, and Ham is the youngest.
Okay. Another thing about that is, do you want to put the link for the StreamYard in the chat?
I could, yeah. I mean, you could, yeah.
Right. So, links in the chat. So anybody wants to join and have a dialogue with the brother, you can. But he says the Shemite language is a baby or something like that, to that nature. That's him again conflating language groups or modern language groups with
biblical people.
Yeah, you can't do that. It doesn't work like that. So language phylum and these biblical people are independent of each other.
The only way you can do that is if you go with a 6,000 year Earth, because then you can say, well, this language would have originated with this person because it would have popped up at the same time. Like if you want to do it like that, you could. But I think Dasharab, if you believe in an old Earth, then your argument doesn't work. Your argument is more for like a young Earth.
All right, we got some people popping in. Shalom, everybody. I'm gonna put you guys in. Just give us a second to get through some of these questions, then you guys can have an open dialogue with Ivory and share your questions. Shalom, brothers.
Yeah, shalom, you guys and gals.
All right, Yitzhak, we want you on here too, brother.
The Himrites.
Shalom to y'all. Shalom to y'all.
Shalom, brother.
Yeah, shalom. The Himrites were Israelites from the tribe of Benjamin that mixed with the Sabaeans, the name Yemen after Benjamin/Benjamin. Interesting, yet sound interesting. You'll definitely have to do a video one day.
Dasharab again.
Are y'all not aware those labels have caused genocides? Which specific labels, Dasharab? How can the Ethiopians be Israelites? Oh my goodness, I didn't say that. How can the Ethiopians be Israelites and Shebites? All right, so I guess I kind of could explain that. So Ethiopians specifically, I would say a lot of them are Joktan, but some of them can be Israelites if they just join the faith, and two, if they descend from like an Israelite male that mixed with an Ethiopian woman. So yeah, I guess technically you actually can have Ethiopians that can be an Israelite and a Shebite. It's just like how you can have Ephraim and Manasseh be half Israelite and half Egyptian. Because Joseph married Asenath. Even using Moses as an example, he had married an Ethiopian.
All right. See. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I give you a response?
Oh, sure.
Okay. That was my question. First of all, I asked that specifically because the Most High has a judgment for the Shebites. Because you said that the Shebites are the Sabians, correct?
Yeah, Shebites would descend from Joktan.
Okay, but I thought you said that they were the descendants of the Sabians, or did they mix with the Sabians? Can you correct me on that?
Sabaeans do descend from Joktan. That's just a later name.
Oh, okay. Well, the Most High got a judgment for them Sabians. So if they're Israelites, how does that work?
No, the entire nation wouldn't be Israelites, but some people can join the faith, conversion, or an Israelite man can marry and mix with a Sabaean woman, and that kid will be half Israelite, half Sabaean.
Okay, you believe? Okay, I mean that's perfectly fine. You gave me a pretty solid answer, but what I'm saying is, so you're not saying that the whole nation are pure Israelites, right?
No, the entire nation would be pure Israelites. It would be like me saying all of Egypt is Israelites because Joseph married Asenath, an Egyptian. No, just because one Israelite marries into another nation doesn't make that entire nation an Israelite.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So how would you tell the difference between a Sabaean and an Israelite?
Based on phenotype or what?
I'm asking you.
Yeah, I just want a little bit more detail is all.
Okay. I guess we can do however you want it. Let's start with the phenotype.
Phenotype wise, you probably could and probably couldn't. I mean, those would be Israel's technical cousins. So, like cousins in your own family, you can resemble, people. So Israelites could resemble Sabaeans. So it might be difficult depending on the individual Israelites' ancestry. They could look more Sabaean than another. An Israelite that married a Cushite can obviously look more different than an Israelite that married a Greek. You can have different phenotypes when it comes to who you're mixing with. But so phenotype wise, you can have some variation between an Israelite and a Sabaean. depending on the lineage.
All right, that's a little longer question I got so far.
Okay, good questions. Good questions.
I do have a question.
Shoot.
All right, Slock it. So I'm a little bit familiar with the channel. I'm not too familiar with you. The brother, I forget your name, who made the channel. You still believe in the 12 tribes chart?
Me?
No.
No, I do not believe in the 12 tribes chart, meaning I do not subscribe that Latinos and Native Americans are Israelites unless they have E markers. But if they're C or Q or anything of that nature, then no, I would not consider them Israelites.
Okay, because I some of the earlier videos I see you breaking down, I guess, proving the 12 tribes chart. What changed?
Well, I started to study DNA. So I started studying DNA, and the core central ideology of the Israelite movement is that we share a common ancestor in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if that's the case, then we need to have a similar Y chromosome because these are males that we're descending from. And all Native Americans and all Hispanics do not have a similar Y chromosome. So that was one of the major factors in me dropping that theory altogether.
Okay. But you still agree that, I guess, African Americans today, the descendants of the slave trade, etc., we are the Israelites, or no?
I agree. Yes, I agree that a considerable amount of what we call African Americans would come from Israelites, but also Hispanics, those that have E markers. I'm not completely cutting them off.
Yeah.
But it's just those that are. If you're Hispanic, you understand, because I come from a Hispanic background too. My grandfather, being my grandfather, but I'm EU 290. I'm E1 B1A. And you couldn't tell that by looking at my grandfather because my grandfather looks like George Lopez or something to that effect, right? So I'm not judging people on how they look. I'm not judging people on where they live, the geographical location. I'm looking at the DNA because we're claiming to come from a common ancestral lineage, patrilineal lineage. So we should share a similar Y chromosome haplogroup.
Okay, and you how do you still feel about the so-called white man today? You say he's Esau?
So DNA, my understanding of DNA and haplogroups helped me understand that as well. A lot of what we call white European males are haplogroup R. So that would be Japhet in my model. That would not be Esau. But you do have, I believe it's EV12, right? Right, Avery? Or EV13?
Yes. EV13.
I'm thinking those, I'm leaning towards those individuals that went to Greece and Rome and actually took part with the Yamnaya to actually take over Europe around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago are actually Edomites, according to that line of thinking.
I actually went over EV13 in my first presentation, I think, dealing with EV13 going into the Balkans with the Greeks and the Romans. They have a lot. I also show maps of it, of EV13.
All right, and then so who do you guys say? I guess a question to both of you, the guy who did the presentation, the brother rather, and then you. So who are the Jewish people? Who do you guys say the Jewish people in Israel are today? What people do they descend from in the Bible?
Do you want me to go first or let Genesis 49 go?
It doesn't matter, whoever.
I can take a shot at that. So when it comes to Jewish people, they have a lot of different Y-DNA markers. Some have R, some have G, some have J, some have E, and even some have Q. So when it comes to the Jewish people, through the Y-DNA, it splinters off a lot. And haplogroups like G, J, R, Q, GJRQ, and I, whatever. All those are Japheth
Okay.
markers. So I would say Jews with E have the best shot, like Yemenite Jews. Yemeni Jews have E, and they have the oldest form of Hebrew, and they have a lot of old Hebrew texts and stuff of that nature. And I think you've seen Yemeni Jews and stuff of that nature recently. Like 19th century photos were released of them, and they're very interesting looking people, to say the least. But also, Samaritan Jews of the descendants of Aaron, the Kohanim, they have E. A lot of times you hear about the J, but people don't tell you about the E marker that they have. So a lot of Jews have E. People they don't talk about it, they downplay it, but E is the second highest haplogroup among Jewish people.
So in general, you would agree that in the majority or in general, that nation, they're imposters. They're not the real Jews.
I try to be politically correct and careful about saying that type of stuff, especially online. I would say that when it comes to DNA, a lot of them can trace their lineage, or specifically with the J marker. A lot of them can trace their lineage to the Near East. But the question is, a lot of different people lived in the ancient Near East. You had Hittites, Hurrians, you had Indo-Aryans, you had all types of people, Mitanni, all types of ethnic groups living in the ancient Near East. And that J marker can belong to any of those ethnic groups. So, and I'll actually deal with haplogroup J on my next presentation. So when it comes to them being like imposters and all that, I just say, their DNA goes back to the Near East. It's just that there was thousands of different ethnic groups living in the Near East,
So I guess, because you being politically correct, I'm not really sure if I'm getting a straight answer. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but maybe Genesis 49ers can help. So, I guess the typical idea is that the real Jews came from transatlantic slave trade, but those ones there, like Christ said, Jerusalem would be trodden down by the Gentiles till the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So you don't agree with that?
No, I agree with that scripture. I don't downplay any type of scripture. I definitely agree with that end time prophecy that Jerusalem will be trodden down by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And if you ask me, being respectful as I say this, I do believe that there's still a lot of Gentiles in that land. I'm trying not to be canceled. So I am going to speak from a politically correct view.
Okay. Genesis 49ers, can you maybe give a little bit input to that?
Yeah. I mean, he pretty much did a beautiful job explicating that. The thing about it is, we know that you had a people come in, like he said, they were there, but they're Johnny come latelys, as I always say. And these people adopted the culture. Even the brother brought out the source about the Proto-Semitic people, the Proto-Afro-Asiatic people having haplogroup E, and then the FM89 lineages in the paper that he brought up, which J would be an FM89 lineage. Any lineage that has G, H, I, J, K, R, P, or whatever, they come from what we call FM89, which is a haplogroup, a group of males that created all of the Proto-Europeans and early Eurasians, right? So this group would have came in, including J, and started to adopt the original culture of the early Levantine people, the early Semite people, which the brother did an excellent job in all 5 parts of this presentation that he brought forth on the origin of the Semite people, would have all had haplogroup E. So using that information and logical deduction and abductive reasoning, we can all posit that the Israelites would have came from haplogroup E as well. Any other haplogroup outside of that would have to be converts or those that adopted the culture. But like the brother said, they were there, but they come too late in the grand scheme of things. And I'll land there.
Agreed. I'll actually get into that in my next presentation when I'll deal with House Group J, and I'll explain when they came in, why they came in, and who their ancestors are.
And I heard you say something about when you answered someone else's question about somebody intermarrying and then being Israelite through their mother. Can you explain what you meant?
No, I believe people are Israel through their father. If we went by the mother, then the Israelites would be Nubians, Egyptians, Moabites, Ammonites. There'll be every ethnic group in the Middle East and
Oh, so
Africa.
you,
If
so
we
you
went
agree
by,
that I'll see to your father?
yeah, I believe it's through the. Wait, what? Say that again.
You believe the Bible? Let me rephrase. The Bible determines what your nationality is by the seed of the father.
Yes, I believe that when it comes to Israel, it's through the seed of the father. After all, they call themselves Israelites. Jacob was named Israel. They call themselves Israelites. The 12 tribes, they're all named after the men who had the name first. You know, Issachar, Asher, Judah. All those are the men. They don't call
Yeah.
themselves, what? They don't call themselves Rebecca-ites or Sarah-ites or Rachelites or Leah-ites. No, they call themselves by the men name, not the female name.
Right. Okay.
Good questions, though. Good question.
All right, no problem. Yeah, I'll let somebody else get it in, but I might have another one in a little bit.
All right.
Hey, sharpening sword. You sound familiar, man. I don't know if I know you or we discussed topics on another platform.
Yeah, I've been on a couple platforms. I've been on Debate Talk for You. I was just on this Christian platform, Signs of the Times. I debated a couple people, like mostly Christians. You probably heard it, most likely you heard us on like a debate platform.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Are you a Hebrew Israelite? Or
Yes,
Hebrew?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to tell that to my agent over here because I'm COINTELPRO. I gotta
But I like
keep tabs.
to just, I like to.
I gotta keep tabs on all the Hebrews now.
But what I seen you presenting was a little different. So I wanted to just, before I knock it, just hear it out. I don't really go off of the DNA stuff. I don't really not to say it doesn't exist, but when I'm determining who is an Israelite, I kind of lean more towards prophecy of the scripture, history, but mostly what the Bible says. And what you were presenting is a little different. So I just wanted to hear it out.
Yeah, I'll get you into the DNA game. It's real thorough and it's real precise. To me, even more than prophecy, because when it comes to prophecy, anyone and everyone has a different interpretation, especially when it comes to the Abrahamic faiths. Everybody has their own view of how like the world ends and different things in the scriptures. The Catholics, the Mormons, the Muslims, the Jews, the Hebrews, everybody. Protestants, everyone has their own interpretation of the end times. So it's like it's hard for me to use prophecy to gauge who people are and stuff like that. It can be a bit wonky, if you know what I'm saying. But DNA, it's far more precise and concrete. Like if you're trying to find out who the daddy is, you go to DNA. You don't go to anything outside of that.
Okay, and then so that reminds me, like when you were describing, I think I had asked what was the source to describe the color of Christ, but outside of the Bible, because sometimes when we're breaking down the word, they want to know why we believe he is a Negro without the Bible. What would you like? You agree he is a Negro, correct?
I agree that he was dark skinned, dark haired, and dark eyed.
What would you like?
Negro is a flimsy term because there are groups of Bantu people and Niger Congo people who quote unquote aren't Negroid, but they still have haplogroup E1B1A. For instance, the Tutsis. People try to classify the Tutsis who are Bantu as Caucasoid because they don't have a promathous jaw and they don't have a wide nose. Their noses are thin, like a Cushite or a Ethiopian Jew or a Yemeni Jew. You know, they have thin nose and no chromatins. Same thing with the Fulani people. The Fulani people are a Niger-Congo speaking ethnic group with even BUNA, and they have thin noses and they aren't very chromatinous in the jaw. So, you know, I don't think every single person with E-M2 is like a Negroid. And so when it comes to the ancient Israelites, I wouldn't say that all of them are Negroid. I think you had Israelites that are Negroid, but I also think you had some that look like Fulani, some that look like Tutsis, basically a variety of phenotypes, but all dark-skinned people, definitely dark.
Sorry, I'm not familiar. What do you mean Fulani and Tutsi? Are those African tribes? I'm not sure.
Yes, they're African ethnic groups, specifically Bantu and Niger-Congo, and their features are quote unquote what people will say Caucasoid. Even though they're black, even though they're Bantu, even though they're Niger-Congo, they physically look like what people try to say black Caucasoid or whatever.
So they actually, I never heard of that actually. So they try to say that those African people, those specific tribes are Caucasoid.
Yeah, actually, since you're online right now, type in Tutsi people and you'll see what I mean. And then type in Fulani people so you can have a visualization.
How do you
Tutsi is
spell that?
T, yeah, here, Tusi. Actually, that's what that whole Rwandan genocide was about. It was about like Tutsis being better than Hutus and Hutus being better than Tutsis based on phenotype.
Tutsi is Tutsi.
Yeah, Tusi. And Fulani, Fulani. Not everyone in sub-Saharan Africa looks the same. Everyone has various features.
Okay, so, and then what was the other one?
Fulani, Fulani. They have a variety of phenotypes. Even when it comes to people in like Nigeria, if you were to type in red Igbo, the way you spell Igbo is IGDO. Wait,
You
no,
mind
IGDO.
if I share my screen? Sorry. To Genesis 49ers, I know it's the platform.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So this is what I found on Red Igbo.
Yeah, like even they're in Nigeria and they have brown skin tones.
Right. So for the majority, you would say the ancient Israelites look like those three groups of people you just described.
I'm actually working on a presentation where I'll go into how I think the Israelites look like, because if you do enough research, the Egyptians literally depict the Israelites. And it's very interesting the way they depict them.
What would you say? What would you say that is, just briefly?
They definitely would have been dark skinned. I don't think they would have been white. They would have been dark skinned, dark haired, and dark eyed. And they would have had multiple nose sizes. They would have had slim noses to even wide noses. They would have had medium lips to full lips. Some of them would have been chromathinous. Some of them probably been less chromathinous. So I couldn't really just say, like, pinpoint an exact type. I can just give you the skin tones and the things of that nature. Well, is that you right there, or did you mean to show your camera? I can't really see you because the text is in the way, so don't worry.
Yeah, he probably did that on accident.
Yeah, we didn't see you. We only saw your hair. So.
Oh, no worries. So I'm just trying to. I guess I'm misunderstanding. Like, you're saying they're dark skin but not black.
No, they would have black skin as well. When I say dark skin, that includes black, brown, medium brown, reddish brown. I kind of go for more like a ruddy. And ruddy, I went into this when I dealt with Adam, his skin tone. Ruddy is like a reddish brown.
But no, like mostly Negro features. I know you don't like that term, but I'm just trying to understand.
Wait. Can you say that again?
Like you would say, the ancient Israelites had what we call today as Negro features, but I think you said you look at it as a little different.
Yeah, I'd like to break things down in specifics. So I would say dark skin, medium brown to dark brown, curly hair to woolly hair. Some could have a thinner nose, others can have a wider nose. Some can have a chromatic jaw, others can have a less chromatic jaw. I would do it like that. I would try to be real specific with someone. I wouldn't just flat out say, oh, they're Negroid, oh, they're Caucasoid. I would be like, okay, so I'm going to break this down into X, Y, and Z. Or I'll just show an image of an ancient Israelite. For instance, the guy that I have in my profile picture, this is a Hebrew from the Greco-Roman period. And, how would you describe his features?
His hair, I would say his hair looks kind of look like, I would almost say it looks woolly. He's got a big nose.
Yeah. Here, let me pull him up for you. Let me go on Google and pull him up. Greco, let me see.
Yeah, if you look at the Tutsi and the Hutu, the Hutu are 80% E1B1A, and the Tutsi are 60% E1B1A. So they were warring each other because they thought they had a different lineage. They thought that one was a Hamite, one was a Israelites, but they both, by and large, share the same Y paternal haplogroup, which is E1P1A.
Yep. And that's
Even
what I
though they
mean.
look
Israelites could have had many phenotypes because they're both related and have different phenotypes. You can go ahead, Scholastic. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no. I was just that was it right there. I was like, even though they look different, one looks more Ethiopic, saying more, what they would say a Caucasian cast, thin nose, thin lips, the jawline doesn't protrude. Like who was that? Think of like Gilly the Kid or a Nipsey Hussle. A lot of them could have that type of phenotype, which they would not associate with what we call Negroid. And like the brother said, that's very ambiguous terminology. So he's trying to be specific. Another point before I move on is a lot of those features that we associate with Negroid. We would have looked more like our East African and North African brothers prior to penetrating the Sahara and sleeping and mating with many of the local women of the sub-Saharan, which would have been in the pygmy tribes, the forest groups, and stuff of that nature.
Can you show my screen real quick? I'll give him probably one of the best examples. See, this is a terracotta head of a Semite, marked Hebrew from the Petri from Memphis. The Egyptian Greco-Roman period, or the Greco-Roman period in Egypt. This is a Petri museum. You can find this in London. And just to make the image a little bit bigger, let it load a bit. But this guy, is one of the examples of an Israelite. Of course, he's Hebrew, he's an Israelite. So, he has brown skin, he has, a pretty nice sized nose, black hair, a bit woolly, Zoom in. Oh, maybe that's a little too zoomed in. But you kind of get the idea. He has a pretty good hairline,
Right. Yeah, I see that.
So that's one good example.
Okay. You have any other I'm interested in checking out some of your other work. You got like a channel or something I could go to? Or
yeah, when I'm done with this, I can give all my socials when we're done with the Q&A. I can go through that at the end. Okay. So just stick to the end and I'll give all my socials.
Okay, all praise. I didn't mean to take up all the time, but I appreciate the answers.
No, it's all good, man.
All right. Shalom to you, brothers.
All right, shalom.
All right, so let me see if we have any other questions. I guess this is more so of a statement. This is Yitzhak.
King Menelik was half Israelite and half Sabaean. Yeah, great example. King Menelik would have been a half of an Israelite and half of descendant of Sheba, the son of Joktan. Or well, Queen Sheba. Well, her name was called the Queen of Sheba, so her lineage being from Sheba, son of Joktan, aka.
He says, "Show King Jehu."
Yeah.
Yeah, that Negro thing and trying to superimpose that on everybody or every Israelite is problematic. Like we were bringing out, that we probably wouldn't have had those strong features that we attribute to sub-Saharan Africans today, like an Igbo from Nigeria. That probably wasn't the case if we were rewinding the hands of time far back enough before we start penetrating these areas. That wouldn't be the case. Let me go to ISOGG 2010. And see what they say. So if you go to isogg.org, it's pretty much a website that does all the classification for genetics. If you go to this website and you type in haplogroup E and its subclades 2010, go down to the part where it describes it, and go to the part where it says E1B1A. It says E1B1A is an African lineage that probably expanded from Northern African to Sub-Saharan and Equatorial African with the Bantu agricultural expansion. So they're saying that this is recent, because we know agricultural Bantu expansion only happened around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. So prior to this, you wouldn't have the admixture of Sub-Saharan African Africoid features within E-M2, like the brother brought out, E1B1A. We didn't get that until this period of time. So just keep that in mind. So brothers that are saying, "Oh, would they have looked Negroid?" Well, you have to remember, we didn't start mixing with these other groups until recently.
Like I said, the best example when it came to Abraham, our ancestor, would have been like a Sabaean, which Sabaeans looked Ethiopic. Like when you saw those Sabaean statues, put it right next to an Ethiopian, it looks exactly the same because they're the same people. Abraham, including our ancestors, could have looked something like that. And I had plenty of other examples like Natufians and whatnot. So definitely a variety of phenotypes. Again, Tutsis and Hutus are a good example of variety.
Right. If you read this in its entirety, it says E1B1 is by far the lineage of greatest geographical distribution. So that goes back to your point earlier. Really, when we're bringing up EP2 and its descendants, we are unifying Africa, because the majority of males in Africa would be descendants of E1B1, that ancient patrilineal ancestor of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And once we make that, we draw that commonality between groups, that supersedes geographical location, that supersedes national affiliation, language, and even religion. So when we're talking about unity, this is a tool or a mechanism that could unify so many people in Africa, because majority of African males fall within the category. It says it has two important sublineages, E1B1A, E1B1B. And a lot of people with E1B1B will look down or look at E1B1A as if we're not even related, but they don't understand DNA. These two groups share the same ancestral fathers. It says E1B1A is an African lineage that probably expanded from Northern Africa to Sub-Saharan and Equatorial Africa with the Bantu agricultural expansion. E1B1A is the most common lineage among African Americans. E1, B1, B1 probably evolved either in Northeast Africa or the Near East, and then expanded west, both north and south of the Mediterranean Sea. So this comports with what the brother has been showing you guys with the 5-part series about them being in the Near East, being involved with the Proto-Semite, Proto-Afro-Asiatic. We didn't make this website ISOGG. We didn't make it. So again, we're sharing sources. The brother is showing you that his methodology and his approach to the academic research is on point. So it says E1B1B1 clusters are seen today in Western Europe, Southeast Europe, the Near East, Northeast Africa, and Northwest Africa. The Crusani articles, referencing the links below, are indispensable resources for understanding the structure of this complicated haplogroup. But note that the Crusani haplogroup labels are now superseded because the recently discovered new SNPs are SNPs that lie closer to the root of the E branch of the haplogroup tree. So yeah, you can find this on isogg.org. And it's Y-DNA haplogroup E and its subclades 2010.
Yes, sir. That alone proves everything. And we can go much deeper when we touch on Israel, because remember, I'm only really dealing with the ancestors of Israel. Notice that I stopped with Abraham. So, when I actually get to Israel, we'll, of course, be getting much more closer to our ancestors, and I can break down how we're connected to the Israelites. That'll be after my Haplogroup J presentation. If Genesis 49ers would allow me to do an Israelite presentation, I'll begin with the entrance of Israel into Egypt during Joseph's period.
All right. Yeah, we'll greatly appreciate that, and I'm pretty sure the audience will agree with me. You've done an excellent job, and these brothers are waiting for more. So just bring it out, man. We'll be here for the platform. Platform will be here, and whenever you're ready.
All right, yes, sir. I will be, because I technically already have it done. I just gotta do my Haplogroup J, but I do technically have my presentation done for Israel, for the actual Israelite connection.
Right. I want to say to the audience, if you have any questions for the brother, it's prime time to pose your questions now. Any questions about the presentation, the origin of the Semitic people, what he brought out about Abraham, the phenotypes and stuff of that nature, Joktan. If you want him to elaborate on any point, it's prime time that you get your questions in now.
Yeah, because it's getting late.
Yeah.
And
It doesn't look like anyone.
Wait, what you say?
I said it doesn't look like anybody's putting in new questions. Just commentary.
Okay. Now let me get my socials ready then. So just in case people want to find where I'm at. And also, you guys, I'll be on Clubhouse for a little bit, not too long, but a little bit, and we can even chat up there if y'all want. If y'all don't know what that app is, I'll tell you what it is here in a second. But yeah, well, as Yeshub said, or as Genesis 49ers said, get those last questions in because it's getting kind of late. I'm going to try to get to bed. I actually want to try to work a little bit on my presentation tonight before I go to sleep. Got to get my pictures and screenshots and all that together. But I guess I'll give y'all my socials. So where can you find me and support me? So on video platforms, I actually do have a YouTube channel. I haven't uploaded anything yet. I plan on doing it, man. I hope sometime this month. That's all I'm going to say. I hope I get one video out this month. I'm going to do my best to. But yes, I do have a YouTube channel, The Hebrew of Israel. Most of my socials are called The Hebrew of Israel. I try to keep it simple. I have a BitChute just in case I get canceled. I also have a Daily Motion, a DTube, a Rumble, iConnect FX, D Live, brand new tube, Twitch, and I'll also try to make another YouTube channel, like maybe the Hebrew of Israel 2 or something like that. I kind of learned from being on YouTube that YouTube can like get rid of your channel if you do a guide, if you do a community guideline or something. So I'm going to try to have at least 2 or 3 channels, so y'all can wait on that one when it comes out. But I also have social media platforms such as Clubhouse. This is my actual Clubhouse profile. This is my Clubhouse room. I actually have a room where we can chat and talk about different subjects. This is my Facebook account, my Facebook profile. I also have a Facebook page here where I'll also be sharing information. I also have an Instagram where I can show pictures of my presentations. And I also have web pages that I'm connected to, such as Medium or Quota. You can ask questions on Quota, and I can answer them. And I also have forums that I'm on, such as Reddit, if y'all are familiar with that. Hebrew Sphere, which one is it? Macedon, and Black's Men Zone. I'll see if there's more forums I can join in the future, and you can find me there. And if you want to support me money wise, I have a Patreon and I have a PayPal and I have a GoFundMe. But anyways, I do have a YouTube channel. I will be making videos soon.
All right, so we did get a few questions in. ESAP brought he repping his. He said EM 123 is the Koine marker.
Yep.
Robert D. Henderson says any information on haplogroup EZ5994.
I can put that in my notes and I can take some time to research it.
EZ5994. I'm trying to remember if that's associated with Natufian or not.
It sounds like a E1B1B marker, but I'll have to research that. Could be.
Yeah. Robert D. Henderson, you can go to Genetic Homeland and actually go to the phylogenetic tree and type that in, and it'll give you the breakdown of where it comes from. As far as phylogenetically, so it'll let you know where it descends from.
It's E1B1A, he said.
Is E1B1A?
Yeah.
Let me type that in. EZ what?
994. EZ5994.
EZ5994.
I think he said it's E1B1A.
EZ5994. All right, I'm typing it in now. Genetic Homeland. Yeah, it is E1B1A.
So if you want information on that, just follow everything up on E1B1A itself, E-M2 or EV38. It'll be genetically, that marker, it'll be genetically linked to Ramses III as a pretty good example. Y'all will share a common ancestor that lived in North Africa or West Asia. But looking on at the information that I see so far about this marker, it's seen in, of course, African Americans and people in Sierra Leone. It's seen in Gambia. So I would study, if I were you, because this is the markers that it shows, I would study the people of Sierra Leone and the people of Gambia, because this is where, I see a lot of markers pop up on.
Jay Cooley says, I have a question. Brother, put the question in the comment.
Yeah.
You can tell us what your question is, brother. Jay Cooley. I don't know if this is a statement.
All creations. Yeah, I think that's more of a statement.
Okay. That's it.
Except for that guy who said I have a question.
Yeah, Jay Cooley, if you there, man, hurry up and get your. Yeah, ask the question, brother.
All right. I was waiting for you to ask the question. All right, ask the question.
All right, Jay Cooley. We're gonna give you some time, but we're getting ready to close up soon. So, if
Yeah.
anybody else have any questions, it's best you go ahead and get it out now because I'm not going to extend this live longer than 5 more minutes.
Yeah. It's late.
Nikki Lane says who are the Nabti people? The Nabti.
You should be telling me because I don't know. No.
Yeah, I don't know who the Nabti people are either. Are they like East Africans or something?
I found nothing. I typed them in on Google and I found literally nothing. You may have mispronounced the name, Nikki, like miswrote or mistyped the name.
The Nabti people. Huh.
Yeah, because I found literally nothing. You
Jay
could be
Cooley.
talking. Wait, what?
I was just telling Jay Cooley he needs to get his question in.
It's gonna be a long one if he's typing it right now. If he's still typing it, it'll be a paragraph. I mean, I'll read a paragraph.
Yeah. One source you brought up mentioned the Tuareg people in it. What's that book called? I have that book. The
That
one
I
you
brought
brought
up.
up. Yeah, the one you brought up about the E1B1B spreading with farmers and spreading the language, Afro-Asiatic language. Let me get it. I have it on my Google Play account.
Yeah, I brought up so many sources. I'm trying to think which one it was.
Yeah, it's this one here. Gene Munkel's ancestral journeys, the peopling of Europe from the first adventurers to the Vikings.
Wait, say that one more time. Let me see.
Gene Munkel's ancestral journeys,
Gene Ruffles, ancestral.
and that book you brought out the source about the E1B1B1 being associated with the Afro-Asiatic family.
Mm-hmm. And you said the Tuaregs, the
Yeah,
Berbers.
brought up. Yeah, he talks about the Tuaregs in there as well. That the Tuaregs have EM81 in its brother clade E175. So that's E1B1B and E1B1A in the same group.
Very interesting. I have a theory on who the Tuaregs are. Biblically.
I guess you're gonna divulge that in a later video.
I'm thinking in my head if I should say it now or well, I guess I'll say it now, and if no one does any studying, that's on them. But I'd rather them not, so I can actually break it down. But my thoughts on the Tuaregs is that they're Midianites, and there's some oral history that allude to that. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Orthodox Moore says, "Do you have any info on EM84?"
Yes, actually, I brought it out here tonight and the other night. I'm going to show a quick slide. A lot of EM84 could be Joctonites. Let me give you a visual representation as to why I say that. EM84 is seen heavy in the region of Arabia, Here, let me find that real quick. Oh, I got the wrong presentation. I'm sorry. Pull up this one. It's part one of this. All right. So yeah, a lot of EM84 is found in Arabia. Should I have it ready when I said that? But yeah, so here's a map that actually shows you a very high concentration of EM84 in the Arabian Peninsula and in Yemen. And I believe that these would be Joctonites. Can you see? Let me show you. EM84. A lot of it is concentrated in Yemen and, all over Arabia. These are EM84 lineages. And I believe this would be a lot of your Joctonites. Here's also another map that kind of shows it. But yeah, that's to answer that question. Good question. Very good. You might have to move the picture though for them to see yeah. Oh, they can't see because of the thing in the side of the here. Let me actually just make it smaller. Or y'all might be able to see now. You see EM84 right here. And all these EM84 lineages in Yemen, these would probably be your Joctonites, A lot of people don't know about E being in Arabia. I mean, it's deep throughout Arabia. A lot of people focus on J. E is technically, it's left out of the conversation. But, when you really do a lot of studying, E is where it's at. E is the origin of a lot of these Semitic Afro-Asiatic people. And it's the second or third highest haplogroup in the Middle East. And let me actually show you a map of E-M123 in Arabia. You find this off Google. As I said, it's heavy in Western Arabia and Southern Arabia, and you find it in Ethiopia with your Ethio-Semitic people. But I hope that answered your question, Orthodox, more. If it does, a thumbs up, I guess, so I can know.
Yep. All right. So
Yeah, you're right, Orthodox. I actually do plan on debating him in the future. Please don't tell him about my presentations. I want everything that I tell him to be new to him. I want him to have the Pikachu shock face, that meme, if y'all are familiar with it, the Pikachu shock face, when I give him all that work. So don't tell him about any of this. I want this to be new because he likes to claim he knows everything. He's very, what's the word? Bold, I guess. He's prideful. He's very prideful. And want to shatter his dreams. but yeah.
yeah. So the DNA is pretty much putting a hammer to a lot of these concepts that these people have been pushing for eons, about the Hamite thing and that we have no connection, but you can clearly see we do through the DNA.
Yep. And when we break down who haplogroup J is, they'll have no choice but to accept E as Semitic because J, as I said before, it's really Japhetic, and I'll explain why in the next week or two. hopefully I'll get it done sooner than that. But
Yeah, Anonymous Hebrew. We're gonna put all of his videos into one playlist. So all you have to do is click the playlist, and you can watch part 1 through part 5 and get caught up on that. Yeah, the brother is, like I said, he's the savant from the Levant, man. Brother's a genius, and we welcome here at the channel. Anytime he wants, he has access to the platform to disseminate information.
and thank you, by the way. Thank you.
You're welcome, brother. Okay, so just more comments, no questions.
Okay.
The brother
Close
Jay
this.
Cooley, he asked a question that was far from the topic. He was going into the vaccine, so I didn't.
The vaccine. What?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not answering none of those questions. I ain't gonna get canceled.
yeah, brother. So, yeah, that's something we're not discussing here on whether or not.
You know, YouTube kick you off.
Right, right. The brother is on Clubhouse as Hebrew of Israel. So, if you guys want to dialogue with him further, I advise you to download the Clubhouse app, search for the Hebrew of Israel, and the brother is pretty active on there. So um, that's how you can reach him. And Chris, stop stalking this brother. I know you watch my video, stop stalking this brother, man.
He always pops up every time I join a room. That does get annoying. It's creepy.
A lot of you guys from the other side of the aisle are very religious in your thinking that you want to proselytize anyone who is pushing the notion that we're Shem or that we're Israelites. You feel that you have to come in and play the role of the Catholic Church in the 17th, 18th century and try to colonize brothers' minds. But yeah, man. Find something better to do. Stop stalking people on Clubhouse. Any closing statements before we close it out with the song, brother? You want to let the people know?
Just look out for that Haplogroup J video and everything that I've said in these past 5 presentations. Don't just take my word for it. Go research it. Go back, look at all the sources that I have. As when I read my my sources, on the left hand of the screen, I have the title and the author and the scientist. If it's a genetic paper or if it's a book. If you notice throughout all my presentations, on the left hand screen is the title. I always make sure I do that so people can't say that I'm making this up. And on of course, the right hand of the screen is the text, and I always underline the most important details. And so, go back through everything that I've said and research. Look at the book. Look at the PDF. Look at this scientific paper. And get acquainted with everything so that you too can have understanding when you go up against different people like urban apologetics or whatever, because they're starting to learn genetics and they're starting to get into it, and you need to have an ace up your sleeve. And Yeshub and I were not always going to be here. You need to be the one that can also hold your own against people who disagree with your position. And your position is the best position when it comes to proving who a proto-Semite is and who an Israelite is. Being, haplogroup E or having a very strong connection to Africa and stuff of that nature. So start studying, start looking into it. I'll have more presentations on that in the future. I'll do a presentation on who the Israelites are. I'll do a presentation on the Canaanites, their enemies. Like I said, I am coming up with a presentation on Haplogroup J, and it's going to be a few videos, not just one, and they'll be even more in depth than the videos that I did here, if you can believe that. It'll be much more in depth because it is the haplogroup that everyone thinks is Semitic. So I have to be even more in depth than I was here. So be on the lookout for that. And y'all just try to stay safe, stay cool, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah, man. I gotta honor this request right here for Chris Harris. This brother this brother skims, man. So uh, he's one of those kids that don't read the words, just look at the pictures.
Picture pages, time to get your picture pages, time to get your crayons and your pencils. Picture pages, open up your picture pages, time to watch Bill Cosby do a picture page with you.
Oh man, you know that brother had all the pop-up books. You remember the pop-up books? You know, you open it, it's like it starts off 2D, then it becomes a 3D image. You know that brother had growing up. That's all he had. You know, he wasn't required to do any strenuous reading and researching. But yeah, man, y'all stay on the lookout for this brother's video. He was completely right. You guys have to become researchers. You guys have to employ research methodology, and we can't always be the voice for you guys. You guys have to learn how to defend yourselves. So excellent way to end the video, brother. With that, shalom.
Shalom.
Big business.
RSK, let it play, boy.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. I wake up and say me a prayer. Brush my teeth, babe, then I throw on some threads. Wash my face, grab a cup, hold me some yum. Put on my backpack, then I'm off to the bread. I eat these devils for breakfast. Gotta be careful. Whole lot of blood being shed in the streets. World is so wicked, I weep for the living. I drop a free church for the dead. All my white friends in my pocket, or either they loading onto this black card that I swipe. Say every time that I drop it, the verses be hitting more harder than problems of life. Rich, I collected 2 pennies from every person that willingly gave me advice. Being afraid can't exist in my spirit. I'm fearing no man but the Father in Christ. I put in work with the brothers. We stood on them corners from 10 to like 9 the same night, teaching our people the gospel, equipped with a camera, some posters, some speakers, and mic. Every time that I see mama, she telling me, son, you gotta walk in the light. Christ, the bread of heaven, keep feeding my spirit, and I wanna low, not a slide. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
When I tell ya I'm an Israelite, tribe of Judah, don't you take it personal. Bleed the blood on these demons, we purging them. Don't entertain Jezebels, we be curving them. Ayy, I got a ribbon, she virtuous. In person, this blue life ain't virtual. I can't forget when I heard the truth. I got cut with that word, it got surgical. Conviction can lead to repentance. I pray these verses encourage you. We repented, now we on the vertical. Judah rising, see Isaiah 32. Big business, nothing minuscule. I picked up that pen back in middle school. Guard your light and take heed who you listen to. Watch your mouth and your ears and your vision too. Hashatan and Shalkani won't finish you. In Mortal Kombat, this war is not physical. Gird your loins up and follow the general. Messiah is coming, that's scriptural. You gotta starve your flesh. The real war ain't even started yet. This look like a setup for a second exodus. I'm trying to be where the water at. Let's get it.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.